Welcome to the week 2 go-to session. This is the second session of 4 we're holding this month. I hope everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving. I did too. I ended up actually going out of town. I didn't think I was going to, but I did. I got absolutely nothing done. Basically just sat around, ate food, watched lots of college football, and got absolutely zero done. So I do apologize to anybody who sent messages. I don't think I got that many. Most, I think, students were also busy with Thanksgiving and spending time with family and friends. But yeah, I was MIA until I got back late Sunday night. But I think I'm all caught up. Okay, so welcome to week 2. Obviously, we're going to discuss the week 2 activities. There's good news and bad news. The good news is your main activity for the week. So let me bring up the Full Sail website. Okay, let me go into one of these guys here. We're in week 2. Okay. So week 1, remember, because of the holidays, some due dates were shifted. So what is today? Yeah, yesterday was the 20th. Okay, so there are a couple things due last night. Your first weekly journal response, remember, that's where you just have to summarize the week's reading and the week's lecture in 2 paragraphs. The first Achieve module, which I showed in real time during the first lecture. So hopefully everybody got those 2 things completed. If you didn't, please complete them anyway. Okay, let me decide on penalties, if any. It's always best to get work done. But the big guy, remember, the week 1 worksheet, it's due tonight. I haven't taken a peek yet to see how many people handed it in already. But here's the thing. Okay, so week 2, identical. Okay, you got another weekly journal, another Achieve module. And the main activity for this week is an outline. Now, the good news is you actually are going to do a simplified version of the outline. I'm still going to go over the detailed outline, like what you should have been doing, what every other class has been doing. The reason you have a simplified version of this assignment is because you're handing in your first major assignment tonight. Maybe some of you got it done early, but still, for most of the students in my 3 classes, they're probably submitting their worksheet tonight. I have to grade those, okay? And we aim for a 72-hour turnaround time, which means that by the end of Friday, I should have all those worksheets graded. So you need my feedback on that. Remember that brainstorming worksheet? Had like 10 prompts. You need my feedback. Most specifically on that 9th prompt, the one that asked you to take 2 attempts at writing a thesis statement. Because without the thesis statement, you can't move forward. We're working toward the creation of a single paper, but we're doing it step by step, an ad analysis essay. So week 1, of course, we looked at lots of ads. But we also spent time. Remember, I kind of was like a broken record. I said, remember the number 3. When you choose your ad from that approved list, whether it's the Call of Duty ad, the McDonald's ad, the Allstate ad, etc., you got to spot 3 things, just like we did in the week 1 session. Remember, we looked at 2 car ads and then a Diet Coke commercial. And we noticed lots of cool things, everything from color to lighting to the use of music in the Diet Coke ad, right? Because we're trying to answer the question, why? Why this music? Why this color? Why this lighting scheme? If you think back to the convertible ad, why this woman in this red convertible up front and center? What's the link between the 2? Why are they linked together, right? Because when you're paid millions of dollars to come up with an ad campaign, no detail's accidental. A lot of thought goes into every decision made. So you need to spot 3 moves that the ad makes, 3 decisions that the ad's creators made, and talk about them, right? I can't remember if I showed this in week 1. I think I did. Where is it? I got 10 million things open. So, okay, here. I did all the assignments, well, a couple of the assignments, major assignments for this class, because I think it's useful to complete the assignments that you ask students to do. So here's an essay that I wrote, okay? And this is based on that cheap ad that we looked at in week 1. Remember? Looked at one way, it looks like one animal. Flipped upside down, it looks like another animal. So here's my paper, which I titled Animal Logic. This is in APA format, which we'll get into next week. Next week's lecture is completely devoted to APA. Yeah, I know. It may not be the sexiest content, but it might be the most useful in some ways, because if you're not familiar with APA, you're more familiar with MLA. Maybe even MLA gave you trouble in high school. Having the entire lecture devoted to APA, I think, is incredibly helpful. So I'll show how to do all this, how to create a header, how to insert page numbers, how to create a cover page, how to set spacing and paragraphing correctly. But here's a completed essay. And in this version, I'm going to do things a little bit backwards tonight. Yes, I have slides and a lecture and all that kind of stuff, but I'm going to just dive right in. Let's get our hands dirty by just looking at the actual things we're working toward. So we're working toward a 5-paragraph essay. And actually, I kind of started a makeshift outline before class. Where is it? It's here somewhere in the there it is, 3 different things I have open. Okay, so here's the thesis for the Jeep essay. This was also shown in the week 1 lecture. Remember I said it's important to identify 3 things because those 3 things get listed in your thesis. And they basically announce to the reader what your major discussion points are going to be for the essay. And once you have them, it sets up the structure for your entire paper. Okay, so each Roman numeral here represents a separate paragraph in the 5-paragraph essay we're working toward. Basically, an introduction paragraph, a conclusion paragraph, and then 3 body paragraphs in the middle. So if we look at the Jeep thesis, through the use of simple color, 1, playful imagery, 2, and a double meaning tagline that reinforces theme, 3, the see whatever you want to see at appeals to the inner venture inside everyone to unlock a hidden enthusiasm for Jeep. Now, because my thesis lists the 3 talking points, we pretty much have the structure for our essay. So we're going to have an introduction. The introduction is a general paragraph, okay, where you make some sort of opening move. You briefly describe the ad and deliver your thesis. Okay, and if we look at the completed essay, that's what I do. Here's my opening paragraph. I'm not going to read the whole thing out loud, but Jeep, the well-known brand, practically markets itself with its reputation for ruggedness, independence, and adventure. Then I found a nifty quote about how Jeep is one of the most, not one of the most copied brand of American vehicles. And then basically I riff on the idea of Jeep. Okay, that's kind of my opening move, is I'm reminding readers what comes to mind when you think Jeep. So the Jeep spirit and the loyalty this car inspires is hardwired into our consciousness. One can easily picture the driver behind the wheel of the Jeep, downshifting around a snaking mountain bend, kicking up dust through the sun-baked Australian outback, or zooming past zebras grazing the Serengeti. Okay, so I'm bringing forth that kind of familiar imagery, right? That this is what we think of when we think of Jeep. I think I mentioned in week 1 that, yeah, I'm aware that I think most people don't use Jeeps for these reasons. They use it to get groceries or pick up the kids, but still, that's sort of the image of Jeep. That's the attraction. That Jeep is this independent off-roading vehicle. Okay, and then here I briefly describe the ad. Okay, it's a print poster and it contains a reversible image in the center, set against a beige mesh background. The reversible image is vintage or features vintage hand-drawn animal sketches, which looked at one way looks like a giraffe, looked at another way is a penguin. The word Jeep and its tagline appears above and below the image, and then finally my thesis. Okay. So that's the gist here. An introduction is a general paragraph, make some sort of opening move, briefly describe the ad, and then it ends with your thesis. It ends with your thesis because that acts as a natural lead-in to the rest of your paper. Notice the introduction, this is not where we analyze anything. Okay, so I'm not getting into explaining why the Jeep ad uses an earth tone or why it has that fabric-y, textile-like background. No, you save that for the body of your paragraph, or the body of your paper. And each of your 3 thesis points becomes a topic of a separate paragraph. So here's the paragraph about my first thesis point, color. So this entire paragraph is about color in the Jeep ad. This paragraph is completely about imagery. This one about the tagline. I think I discussed this in week 1, so I'll fly through it. And then here's my conclusion, okay, where I echo my thesis using different wording. So here, the ad's basic elements, color, imagery, wording, produce maximum results. And then find a couple lines to close the essay down. So if I go back to my outline, that's what we're doing here, okay? The introduction has, you make an opening move, briefly describe the ad, deliver a thesis. Then your first body paragraph, your second paragraph overall, you discuss thesis point number 1. Then thesis point number 2. Then thesis point number 3. And then the conclusion, echo, thesis, and bring essay to a close. Does this make sense to people? Is everybody following with me so far? Yes, no, maybe so. Because I think this is pretty basic, and a lot of you maybe have gotten this in high school, the 5-paragraph essay. But it is new to usually about half the students. Okay, so this is what we're aiming for. I'm also a pretty easy grader in the sense that this is what I'm looking for. A clear thesis with 3 discussion points, and then you use those 3 discussion points to construct your essay. Now, later, towards the end of the course, I'll explain about how writing is actually can be obviously longer than 5 paragraphs, how real writing doesn't always have a super telegraph thesis, but I want these sort of kind of obvious and blatant moves being made now because what it teaches is important, which is structure and focus. When you look at most real world writing, yeah, it has some sort of beginning, it has some sort of ending, and then in the middle, points are discussed one at a time. Okay, I mean, really, even like an interoffice memo may not have a full introduction paragraph, but it usually, yeah, it has something that's kind of like a thesis, right? A purpose to the writing. This memo is to inform employees about changes to the 401k plan, and then it will list those changes one by one, and then there will be some sort of closing. Thank you for reading, and if you have any questions, please contact someone in HR, right? So even a simple memo has this basic structure. It may not be written in full paragraphs, but it does. And that's what I want to reinforce, that most writing has some sort of beginning, ending, and a middle. But in the middle is not just thoughts in your head spilled onto the page in whatever order they happen to come. No, there's actually structure to it. Yes, as Christopher says, it's the backbone to build upon. Yeah, it's like a blueprint, okay, or a skeleton. And that's what you're doing this week with the outline. And the reason I use this example is because your assignment for this week is basically to do this, okay, with a bit more detail. Actually, let me dive right into the outline itself. Keep in mind, you're not actually going to complete this outline template because of the Thanksgiving break and because it's going to take me to the end of the week to get you feedback on your worksheet. We can't really expect you to bang out something this specific. So, because I think it's incredibly useful to go over it quickly anyway, I'm going to do so and then show you that your assignment is actually much more simple than this. But this is the template we normally use most months. And every Roman numeral here represents one of the 5 paragraphs, just like I showed in the simplified version, right? Like this guy here. Okay, same thing, 1 through 5. Here, also 1 through 5, but it's broken down. So, for example, this is the introduction paragraph section, and it asks for 3 things: a 1-sentence hook, enticing your audience to read more. In other words, just give me a sense of what the opening sentence of your essay would be. Okay, and that's what I've done here. Jeep, the well-known brand, practically markets itself with its reputation for blah, blah, blah. Obviously, you have to develop it beyond a single sentence, but that's all that's being asked for here. Just a 1-sentence preview of how you think your essay will get underway. Then it asks for a concise description, just 2 or 3 sentences. I think I have 4 here, so 2 to 4 sentences. Where you describe the ad. So that's what I do here. Okay. And again, remember in the opening paragraph I just showed you from the completed essay, this wording appears in there as well. Okay. Why do I ask for a concise description of the ad? Because your audience is the general reader. Okay. Your audience is like a perfect stranger. Someone who maybe they've seen the ad, maybe they haven't. Maybe they've seen the ad, but they don't remember it the way that you do, or they haven't studied it the way that you have. Okay, so you're just giving them a really quick, this is not what you did in the worksheet, by the way. Okay, the worksheet asks for a detailed description as if you were describing the ad to someone who never had seen it before with special attention paid to important details. That's not this. This is just a really basic overview. And finally, the thesis. Okay, and then Roman numeral 2 is your first major body paragraph. Okay, so this is where you discuss your first thesis point, which in this case is color. So it asks for a topic sentence. A topic sentence is kind of like the thesis for this paragraph. It lets readers know what the paragraph is going to be about. So here, the ad is an exercise in simplicity, especially in its use of color. And then it asks for 1 main point you plan to make in support of that topic. Okay, it says sentence describing a detail from the ad that is part of that rhetorical strategy. That's just fancy speak for what's one main point you plan to make about, in this case, color. What's a second main point you plan to make about the ad's use of color? Then it asks for research, specifically a quotation in APA format. We're going to talk about APA format a little bit later. We will get into APA format in general in this lecture, but next week we'll get into it more in depth. So I did some research and found not just one, but two nifty quotations about earth tones, okay, that they're usually reserved for backgrounds. That's useful because in the GPAD, the beige background is indeed a background. Or that neutrals and browns are the epitome of nature. Okay, so that's useful too because the GPAD is making a pretty clear connection to, again, the earthiness, the nature quality of that ad, right? Then ask for a sentence explaining how the research is relevant, and then you repeat. Okay, so paragraph 3 is your third body paragraph, where you discuss your second thesis point, which in this case is the Jeep's use of imagery. One point you plan to make in support of this topic, a second point you plan to make in support of this topic, relevant research. So I found a nifty quotation specifically about the ad's imagery. Now it's playing on the idea of perceptions, explanation of how the research is relevant, and then you repeat it one final time. Final body paragraph, your final thesis point, which in this case is the tagline. One point I plan to make, a second point you plan to make, relevant research, explanation of how the research is relevant, and then a conclusion, where it asks to rephrase your thesis statement, and just 2 or 3 sentences about how you might bring the essay to a close. References. Okay, there is a requirement for a full list of references. But here's the thing. Hopefully you're with me so far in terms of like the overall 5-paragraph format and what this outline template is looking for, because I need you to kind of understand this because your task is actually much simpler. So let's go into preview mode. You can read all these instructions on your own. You can see here's the outline template, okay? So let's open this. And you will see it's a stripped down version of what we just looked at. Okay, so you can fill this out, your name, my name, the date. So here you put the title of your ad. Here goes your thesis statement. But look, for the body paragraphs, much simpler. Just body paragraph number 1, give me your topic sentence. By the way, who in attendance here, we have 10 people with us tonight, who here thinks they have 3 pretty solid discussion points for their chosen ad? Like maybe we have someone here who chose the McDonald's ad or the Altoids ad or the Call of Duty ad. Is there anybody here who feels like they came up with 3 pretty cool points that you could share with me? If not, you don't have to. I understand it's a risk because you're sort of waiting to hear my feedback. But is there anybody who feels like... let's go about this way. Who... Okay, Stephanie, you chose Salvation Army. What are 3 things that you noticed in that ad? I'm hoping. This might crash and burn, by the way. But it would be nice to use someone's example. Although I'm a little bit nervous because then people might choose the Salvation Army ad. And Call of Duty, okay. Or Brandon or Maricela. Okay, Steph says metaphor, music, and pathos. Okay, music is certainly important. What do you mean by metaphor? Pathos, I mean, I get what you're saying. I kind of steer students away from logos, ethos, and pathos. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not like you lose points for saying pathos. It's just that they're kind of huge umbrella terms, like pathos is the appeal to emotion. So music is definitely important. Okay. They use a child. Yeah, the casting of a child instead of an adult. So let's go with Stephanie has 2 solid points there. So where's my? I'm getting lost. So for example, the title of the Salvation ad is The Last Safety Net, right? And thesis statement, I'm not going to ask Stephanie to do that, but I mean, her thesis statement probably is something along the lines of the Salvation Army ad uses music, unique casting. I'm not wording this very well, and something else. Okay, in order to, I hate this new MacBook. I got it a couple months ago, and it has the shallowest keyboard. So like my fingers literally cannot. Um, okay, well, other people are sharing their information. Good, good, good. I mean, I'll stick with Stephanie's because she's got two. So okay, so body paragraph number one. Stephanie would have to come up with a topic sentence for her first thesis point. Remember, body paragraph number one is where you discuss your first thesis point, which here's music. Now, maybe Stephanie has a different order. Maybe she put casting first. You do discuss your thesis points in the order they are presented. Okay, so she would have to come up with a topic sentence. Something like the Salvation Army adds choice of music helps draw in the viewer. That's a lousy topic sense. I don't think it really helps draw in the viewer. I think it makes the viewer feel, right? Anyway, I'd fix that later. The important point is that it's a topic sentence, okay? But in the more detailed version of the outline that you would normally have to do, you would have to make one main point you plan to make about the ad's music. For example, describing it or describing how it's melancholy, or perhaps if it changes, often music will change to reflect the ad. So if the ad becomes more hopeful, maybe the music becomes more hopeful. But normally you would have to make two main points, okay? Because that's what an outline is. Where's my, right? Because an outline doesn't stop here. Usually you have things like subpoints, right? A and B. So, but yeah, it's a plan. It's a blueprint. So you're getting your main ideas on the page. But here in the stripped down version, here, let me get rid of this. The stripped down version, we're not asking for those subpoints. We're just asking you to get the biggest ideas on the page. Your thesis, your topic sentences, okay? And then, yeah, research. And then you repeat for paragraph two. So the topic sentence here would have to do something with the casting of the child in the role of an adult. Okay. But yeah, you just have to get your topic sentences down. That's pretty easy. So I feel kind of bad because I do think I like the fact that the department came up with a stripped down version of this assignment, but I'm a little bit nervous because anybody who bombs the basics, like not having three clear points and then putting them in order for body paragraphs, it's like, I mean, I'll try not to be too ruthless on the grading, but yeah, it's kind of like all or nothing here. You either have three clear thesis points and use them for each of your three topic sentences, or you don't. But yeah, okay, you get your topic sentence down, and then you have to do research, okay? And so here it's asking for a parenthetical style citation. We're going to talk about that. And then sample signal phrase. This is confusing, but we'll cover this as well. Let me get to my presentation. I'll fly through a lot of it because we've actually kind of talked about the major stuff already. So welcome to week 2. Okay, so welcome to week 2, blah, blah, blah. Yes, we're getting into process, okay? So you need feedback on your worksheet, specifically your thesis, so you can move forward, okay? Because if you don't have a working thesis, you're in trouble, okay? So I kind of have to give a stamp of approval. This looks good. Your 3 discussion points look good. You can move forward. Sometimes people don't have even a working thesis, or sometimes they have a pretty good thesis, but the 3 discussion points are too broad. So I love 2 of Stephanie's, but I'm not so crazy about the 3rd. But that's not unique to Stephanie. I estimate that half the class will probably use pathos. The reason I steer people away from logos, ethos, and pathos is because, 1, they're huge umbrella terms. 2nd, if I don't push people to come up with very specific things, really half the class would just write about logos, ethos, and pathos. Pathos is the appeal to emotion. And so I'd rather have it attached to something specific, like music, right? Music is definitely usually working towards helping the viewer feel something in terms of emotion. So I'd rather have pathos attached to something very specific. So when you're discussing music, you might mention something about pathos rather than making pathos a topic in itself. But I'm willing to bet that Stephanie probably has good ideas in her worksheets, because that's often the case. Sometimes students will have 5, 6, 7 awesome things, and then it's my job to point out, why don't you use one of these? Okay, but 2 of her points are definitely strong: music and that decision to use a child in the role of an adult. Right? Okay. Oh, I got to talk about this. So I already mentioned your audience is the general reader. Okay, it's like a perfect stranger off the street, and I want to explain how this can actually apply to your work. For example, uh, here I'll use this guy. Okay, um, let me skip down a little bit. I see writing both in the outline and in the essay come week 3. Um, like this is the opening line of a student's paper. In this ad, ah, the guy is nervous on his first day of work. By the way, I'm making all these mistakes not because I don't know how to type. I'm actually a fast typist. It's this keyboard. I hate this new Mac keyboard. The keys are so shallow. I can't type. Okay, but imagine this is the opening line, okay, of an essay. This is the first line that you see. This is vague. Like as the instructor, I have to be the mean instructor and say, what ad? What guy? Right? I mean, anybody know what ad's being talked about here? I think you had, what, 7 or 8 ads to choose from? Anybody want to show off and make a guess? Can anybody tell? By the way, if you can't tell, that's a problem, right? I'm trying to see if anybody said anything. Boom! Good job, Christine. McDonald's. Right. But here's the question I have for all of you. Imagine you're some plain Jane. You're some Joe Schmo. You're walking through a library and someone's left their paper behind. You pick up the paper and here's the first sentence you read. Would you have any idea what they're talking about? In this ad, the guy is nervous. No, right? So, a much clearer opening sentence for an essay would be oh, I hate this keyboard. In the McDonald's ad, first day, Andy, an anxious millennial, is on his first day of work. I'd like to reword that so I'm not using first day twice, but okay, I can fix that later. But you notice the difference, right? This is hopelessly vague. This isn't. And yet I see sentences like this all the time, not just as the opening line, in the middle of the paper, elsewhere in the paper. Why? Because sometimes we think that the ideas that are in our heads are automatically understandable to anyone else. That's not true. Okay? Yes, you know what ad you're talking about if you're the writer here. I can also figure it out because I'm the teacher and I know which ads are available, right? But the general reader would have no clue what this is about. And so good writing, it's just a sort of hallmark of good writing that we hold the reader's hand. We don't explain everything. Like we don't have to say we don't have to explain that McDonald's is a fast food place. Okay? People know that. But we do explain details, right? And a good rule of thumb, and I literally ask people to do this, is when you get your ideas on the page, read them over, but read them as if you're not you. Pretend that you're not you. Okay? Pretend you're just that plain Jane, that perfect stranger, and then read your writing. Would it make sense to you? You can catch so many things if you do that. And it is an important skill because writers, those of us who've been doing this for a long time, we do it automatically. Like I can instantly read over my writing and zero in on a sentence. Oh, that's not clear. Or that's halfway there, but it wouldn't be perfectly clear. Because again, I'm reading from the point of view of not my perspective, but the perspective of someone who's just a general reader. And no, it does not matter if the ad's title is clearly like, McDonald's ad analysis, right? Because the title cannot do the work of your sentences. Okay. I have a feeling I'll be repeating this because not in these lectures, but in my feedback to certain people, because really I see this a lot. And it's always rooted to the same problem, which is that people are automatically thinking that the ideas in their head are automatically understandable to others when they're not. What is an essay? Well, An essay can be anything, actually. A video can be an essay. But for this class, we mean an essay in the more traditional sense, so a short piece of nonfiction writing on a particular subject. Yes, the essays in this class are pretty short. We don't give page counts. We have a word count, so between 700 and 1,400 words. I think my Jeep essay is around 900 words. And my Jeep essay is exactly 3 pages. That's usually the ballpark. I don't really see anyone get to like 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 words. They're all kind of in that 800 to 1,000 word area, which is about 2.5 to 3.5 or 4 pages. Okay, so that's what we're working toward. Now, I'm going to breeze through this because we've already covered this. Basic essay structure. You have some sort of introduction or opening. You have those middle paragraphs, which is where, yeah, you provide support. I didn't make this presentation. Someone in the department did. I replaced the word support with body. But yeah, the analysis goes in the middle of the paper, not the opening or closing paragraphs, which are general. Introduction, conclusion, but in between, that's where our ad analysis occurs. And this is just a further breakdown of what we've also already gone over, that the introduction is a general paragraph. It sets the stage for the rest of the essay. It typically ends with a thesis statement. Okay, so you're basically creating that introduction to build toward that final sentence, which is your thesis, which sets up the discussion of, yes, what you'll talk about in the body of your paper. This is where you develop your ideas. Okay, this is where you include research. This is where all the good stuff happens. Not in the introduction. The introduction is not the place to start talking about the Call of Duty ad's choice in music. Finally, a conclusion, which is like the mirror opposite in some ways of the introduction. It's maybe not opposite, it echoes, okay? It does much the same thing. Remind readers of your main ideas, so your thesis, and finds a way to end the paper on a satisfying closing note. We talked about this last week as well, okay? Thesis statements. So I'm going to fly through that. Paragraph structure, we've also gone over this, okay? That your paragraph should begin with a strong topic sentence because it's like the thesis for the paragraph. Now, in your reading, it will mention that the topic sentence does not have to be the opening sentence. That's true. But for this class, I'll kind of push you to have it as the opening sentence. Just because it helps you, or it'll help lots of students clarify what this paragraph is about. And then once you have the topic sentence, this is where you get into the details, okay, the nitty-gritty stuff about. So if you're discussing Call of Duty ad's choice in music, this is where you explain that choice in music. This is where you'll describe things, explain things, analyze things. And yeah, the link is kind of like a cincher. Here, it's much better. It's so much easier to show this stuff in real time, or excuse me, with a real example. So where's my Jeep essay? Here, let me close some of this stuff. Do I need this anymore? I might. I'll keep it open. Okay, so here's a Jeep essay. Here's the thing. Almost all of you will probably be following a structure that's pretty similar to this. By the way, you will have 2 essays. This Jeep essay and an essay based on that Diet Coke commercial for next week's assignments, okay? So you will have 2 full examples of ad analysis essays. These are useful, I think, the fact that we always have models, because for some students these lectures are helpful, but it's sometimes not until they see actual examples of what they're working toward that things really click. But for example, okay, so here's a paragraph about the Jeep ad's use of imagery. In pretty much all of my paragraphs, I think I follow a similar pattern. Topic sentence. Then I describe things, okay? Because again, the general reader doesn't know things, right? So if I'm thinking about the general reader, first I have to explain things. So here I explain what the ad looks like. I explain the ad's imagery. Then I get into explaining things, okay? Analyzing things. Right? I mentioned that this would not work for another car company, Ford or Lexus. Here's my research. Okay, I found a nifty quotation. The ad encourages viewer interaction, for when rotated, each of the animals becomes another species, leaving the viewer to choose which one he or she prefers, playing on their perceptions. So there's a quotation. I led into the quotation, and I even used some of the language to come out of the quotation. Perception is important, since the ad wants to create a positive perception of Jeep. The animal imagery is effective because it connects strongly to Jeep's overall brand. Only such a versatile automobile as Jeep, the ad seems to suggest, could take one on a journey into the heart of the African plain or the rocky tip of Tierra del Fuego to see giraffes and penguins up close. Okay, so there's kind of my like cinch line. So topic sentence, explain what it is you're discussing, research and further explanation or analysis, and then that kind of cincher line, okay, that ties it all together. So in here, the paragraph about the ad's use of color, okay, here's my cincher line. The color scheme works to promote the rugged off-roading image that the ads campaign's creators clearly desire. So hopefully that makes sense, because yeah, some of these words in the slide maybe might confuse people, but that's basically what's being described here. Topic sentence, explanation, research, and then that cincher line. So here we have to talk a little bit more about research. So you have to complete a scaled down, much simplified outline template. That's great, right? Because it shouldn't take you that long to complete this assignment. But you do have to do research. 3 sources are required. One source should come from the Full Sail Library database, which I'm going to show in a minute. The other 2 sources can come from just about anywhere, but they should be reliable, trustworthy sources. By trustworthy, I mean no Wikipedia, no biography.com, no quotation websites. Okay, sometimes people go to quotation websites, find a cute, pithy saying or something said by someone famous like Abraham Lincoln. That's not research. Okay, you're supposed to find relevant sources that help you learn about, for example, color theory or lighting or music. And then hopefully you'll find relevant information that you would like to quote. That's what you're aiming for. Now, one of your 3 sources has been provided for you if you wish to use it. This is the instructions for the outline assignments. And where is it? There it is. Okay, so this guy here, you can click on it and it opens up a video. This is a short video on pathos, logos, and ethos in advertising. You can use this as one of your 3 sources. So that's pretty awesome. You just have to find 2, okay, if you use this one. Please, though, if you use this video, which is perfectly fine, do something more interesting with it than just tell me that pathos is the appeal to emotion. That's like a basic definition. Just go beyond just defining what pathos means. It's a 6-minute video. There should be something in the video that you can connect to your ad that's useful, that's quotable. Now, Wikipedia is actually okay to begin. It's just not where you finish. So someone in the comments was making an interesting remark about the Call of Duty ad's choice of music, which I'm actually going to use as an example when I go to the Full Sail Library in just a second. But, okay, so the song used in that ad is a really famous song called Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones. Now, let's say you go to the Wikipedia entry for Gimme Shelter. What I don't want is people quoting from Wikipedia itself. Wikipedia, well, for one, Wikipedia is basically an encyclopedia, right? So it's factual information. It's not that it's always bad information. It's just that, yeah, encyclopedias aren't the richest source of information. Also, Wikipedia can vary in quality. Maybe if you're an expert in a certain area, you've even noticed that certain entries are pretty well written and seem to be written by people who know things. Other times they're awful. I mean, god awful. Both the information and the writing. But it's perfectly fine to begin here and then scroll down to the references section. Look how many references on this one song. 74. There might be some interesting stuff in here, like Jagger Remembers, or Mick Jagger on the apocalyptic Give Me Shelter. Mick Jagger tells the story behind Give Me Shelter. Right? In other words, there could be some interesting stuff here. That's fine. That's good use of Wikipedia. Ideally, yeah, one source should come from the Full Sail Library database. If you struggle, you can let me know, and I'll try to help out. By the way, we're in Full Sail Connect, so what I did there was scroll down on the left to library, And then if we scroll down some more to research databases, now you have a whole bunch of research databases. EBSCOhost is a good place to start. EBSCOhost is not the name of a database. It's the umbrella term for a huge collection of databases that are part of the EBSCOhost family, like Academic Search Complete or Business Source Complete. You also have what was formerly known as LexisNexis. It's now known as Nexis Uni. LexisNexis tends to search more general and kind of common publications, so newspapers, magazines, whereas EBSCOhost tends to search journals. There is some overlap, though. But I'm going to go to EBSCOhost. This is a good place to begin. I just select all the databases at once. Now, be careful, okay? What I'm going to do here, I already know how to trigger a specific response. Research is not going to come this quickly for you. In fact, where's my Jeep essay? Okay, here it is. So here's my references page for my Jeep essay. As you can see, I have 6 sources. I didn't even use the video on pathos, logos, and ethos, and advertising. I found 6. You only need 3, okay? So you don't have to go overboard like I did. But look, 6 sources. It took me hours to find these, okay? Because it's not enough to just go to a general website on color theory. I have to find if, for example, the source I found is relevant, okay? Same thing for these other sources. So even though I'm going to come up with something in 2 seconds, it's not going to be this easy for you. Okay, so just understand, research is not going to take 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. It probably should take hours. Okay, so I'm going to type "Give me shelter" and Call of Duty. And yes, I'm kind of helping the Call of Duty people. So I got 3 results. These aren't very useful. This one is in Billboard magazine, which is definitely a music-related site. Although maybe there's something interesting, and I've never looked at this one. Okay, that's the other thing is you have to actually read. You have to decide, is this relevant or is this not? Okay, so I would look through this on my own, but I'm going to go to this other one here. Give Me Sales, okay, also in Billboard magazine by Ann Donahue. You'll either have an HTML file or a PDF. This article is short, and at first glance, because I've read this article before, at first glance it doesn't seem terribly relevant because it's not answering that question why. Remember in week 1 I talked about why is at the heart of analysis. Why this song, right? Why is this song used in the ad? Brandon's actually given some good answers in the chat. I'm just holding back from saying them because I'm trying not to. I'd rather other students working on the Call of Duty ad also kind of reach the same conclusions that Brandon has. But yeah, at first glance, this article doesn't seem to answer the question at all of why does it use the Rolling Stones song "Give Me Shelter." I think I mentioned this week 1, but okay, it's a famous song. It's a classic rock song. It's upbeat. It's energetic. Certainly that's part of the reason, but that's not the only reason, because lots of songs are upbeat and energetic. Lots of great classic rock songs. Why this song? And again, Brandon's kind of answered it in the chat, which is fine. I'm just not going to say what he... but I could argue that maybe there's something I could use here. For example, according to Activision Vice President of Music Affairs Tim Riley, scoring, he means obtaining, Give Me Shelter for the ad was no small feat. Okay, no small accomplishment. And it goes on to explain how he flew to New York to get permission from the rights holders, even showed the band members of the Rolling Stones, so Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and company, an early edit of the ad to get their approval as well. Okay, that's not explaining why this song was chosen, but it certainly shows that they wanted this song, right? Like, they wanted this song, not just any song. And they went to great lengths to get this song. So I think this could be paired with something else, research-based, because it definitely is evidence that, yeah, they wanted this song for the ad. I would still have to do more research to find out why. And actually, I'm going to return to this article next week when I get into showing how to incorporate quotations into writing. But for now, just understand that you need to find 3 sources for your outline. And because your outline, again, is a stripped-down version of it, basically you just have to put 3 topic sentences and then research. So yeah, you will focus most of your time on research. Okay, so let's go back to the outline because the other thing you need to understand is research, parenthetical citation. By the way, you have an example. So I hope it's an example. So click this to see an outline. Do they have an updated version? Yes. Okay. So here's, you have a model, okay, to follow. So this is also based on the Diet Coke ad we looked at week one. As you can see, here's her topic sentence. Her first thesis point is language. So here's topic sentence about language. And then she includes a parenthetical citation and then comes up with a signal phrase. Now, what does this mean? Let's use the example I just found. So here's an article from Billboard magazine by Ann Donahue. What it's asking for is, hold on, let me check something real quickly. Research. Okay, so for research, they're asking for an explanation. So I would say something like, keep in mind we've actually changed ads here, so we're not talking about Salvation Army anymore. So let's change this to Call of Duty. So first, an explanation of research. So I would explain something like the Billboard article explains how the vice president of music affairs for Activision went to great lengths to obtain the rights to the Rolling Stones song Gimme Shelter. Okay, so something like that. When it says research, it's just asking for an explanation from you about why this research is relevant. And then it asks for two things: a citation. Now, here's the basic rules for citations. I'm trying to think. Let me back up for a second. I'm going to share a link with you in the chat. It's called projectapa.info. If you click on that link, I would suggest maybe saving it. I'm going to go ahead and type it into, it's projectapa.info. Okay. This was an APA. This is an APA site created by a fellow Full Sail English instructor. It's useful because it kind of covers the most common stuff that students would encounter with APA, but it also contains explanations. So if I go to, for example, in-text citations, and just go to the first tab, formats, it explains that there are two ways to handle. This is part of what's confusing, and this is why I'm going to devote the entire lecture next week to APA. For example, with a quotation, you have two ways to handle it. You can name the author in your actual sentence, then deliver the quotation. And at the end of the quotation, you just identify where the quotation appears, what page or paragraph number. Or you can find your own natural way to lead into the quotation and save everything for the end. So what the worksheet is asking for is to show me that you can do both formats, the signal phrase format and the parenthetical format. Okay, so if that's still confusing, let me show it in real time. It would be like the equivalent of saying, okay, so I found an article by Ann Donahue in Billboard magazine. Let's imagine that I'm in the middle of my paper. I could either come up with my own way, my own sentence where I mention the author's name. So according to Ann Donahue, and if I mention her name in my sentence, if I mention the author's name in my sentence, I immediately have to put a year. It's just a rule. The author's name appears in your sentence, a year goes in parentheses, of Billboard magazine obtaining the rights to Gimme Shelter was no easy task for, and I'm going to go ahead and grab something from that article. Now, I already know what to grab because this is what I'm going to do next week for the first time in Activision history. Okay, so I'm going to go grab this. Match destination formatting. We'll put it in the font I was already using. Okay, so see what I did there? According to Ann Donahue, because I mentioned the author's name, I immediately put a year in parentheses. Billboard obtaining the rights to Give Me Shelter was no easy task for, quote, the first time in Activision history it allowed another company to make edits to the ad itself in order to obtain approval from the band members, end quote. And then I have to put a page number or paragraph number. In this case, there are no page numbers. It's just one page. So I count the paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's in paragraph 5. The abbreviation is lowercase PARA 5. If for a page number, it would just be P lowercase period 5 or 42 or whatever the page number is. Okay, so that's one way to introduce a quotation. Mention the author's name, deliver the quotation, put a page or paragraph number at the end. Or I just find my own natural way. Here, let me grab all of this. Okay. Or I could find my own natural way to lead into it without mentioning the author's name. So I could say, for example, according to Billboard magazine, obtaining the rights to the Give Me Shelter was no easy task because, quote, for the first time, blah, blah, blah. And here, because I did not mention the author's name in my sentence, I put everything at the end. Author's last name, Donahue, comma, year, 2010, comma, page or paragraph number. Okay? So we're going to get into this again next week, but that's what it's asking for. So in the outline template, that's what it's doing here. So in here, you don't have to come up with the whole sentence. You would just have to put, for example, Donahue, 2010. Oh, this is confusing too. If you're quoting directly, you need a page or paragraph number. If you paraphrase, meaning you're not quoting directly, but you're just taking information from something that's not yours, but it still needs to be cited, then you just put author's last name, year. And here is just a signal phrase. All they want you to do is put something like, according to Donahue, 2010. Okay? It's just preparing you to learn these two different techniques. Mention the author's name, immediately followed by a year, or just putting everything at the end. Okay? And you repeat that for the next two things. Does it make sense? Or is this like super confusing? I have to admit, even though the task here is much simplified in comparison to what you would normally have to do, yeah, this stuff kind of doesn't make sense on its own. I'm worried for the people who are going to try to complete this assignment without watching the lectures because they'll be lost. They won't have any idea what to do here. Brandon says yes, a little bit. So yeah, Brandon, you basically have to do this. Okay. So, or let's use Stephanie's example. So her topic sentence was well, I mean, it's not her topic sentence, but her thesis point was also music. So the Army's use of, actually, I'll change it to an interesting casting choice, because casting the role of the boy and the role of the adult was one of her thesis points. Casting choice appeals to the viewer's sense of empathy. Okay. Again, it's a pretty lousy topic sentence, but that's the best I can make off the top of my head. So Stephanie would write something like this, because one of her thesis points is casting. Okay, and then she would find research. By the way, this might be interesting or important too. Like, what should you research? It's doubtful that you're just going to be able to, either through Google or through the library databases search tools, just put in casting child and role of adult with Salvation Army. That's probably not going to result in anything. But think broader, okay? Stephanie might look into, for example, the appeal of children in ads, okay? Or the role children can play in ads, or how children can elicit feelings of sympathy in advertising, okay? Something like that. So let's say she found something by John Smith, okay? So she would say something like, the John Smith article speaks about how children can elicit sympathy and empathy. Okay. Yeah, keep in mind, I'm just making up, right? I haven't actually found an article about this, but let's imagine that Stephanie has. Okay. Then she would put her two examples. So Smith, say it's from 2014. If you found an actual quote that you know you're going to use, go ahead and show off and prepare yourself for what you'll need for that quote. So if the quotation appears on page 42, put page 42. Or if it appears in paragraph 3, put paragraph 3. Because this way you have the citation already ready for when you use that quotation. Okay, but at a minimum, it's if you're not sure because you haven't found a quote yet, just Smith 2014. Okay, and then again, according to Smith 14, right? Now, I'm a little bit nervous about this strip down assignment because I fear that students are just going to put an author's name, year, according to year, and then repeat. But okay, if you can do that. And you can vary it, for example, author, year, says. Okay. Anyway, but you have this example. Every major assignment comes with examples, so always click on the example. And next week, we're going to get into the details about this, okay? Because, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous that some students are going to come away thinking, oh, I just got to put an author's last name and year. That's all I have to do. No, for direct quotes, it's more than that. But we'll get into that kind of hairy stuff next week. But, yeah, that's all you have to do. Now, there's one final part, and this is going to end today's lecture. You have to come up with a list of references. Here's my sort of bargain I'll make with you, though. Because we're going to get into APA next week, I just want to see you make the strongest attempt possible. I've given you the site projectapa.info. So, for example, for references, identify the source that you found. For example, if you found something in a newspaper or a magazine or a database, go here. And then find which one matches your example. Okay, article from an online newspaper, article from a database, and just imitate the example. Okay. By the way, it's always the same. It's always author's last name, so like Walsh, J, first initial, a date, 2014. Could be longer if it's something like a newspaper that's published often. Period. Always a period after each part. So author's last name, first initial, period, date in parentheses, period. Then the title of your article goes here. Notice I do that on purpose. In APA, you capitalize just as you would a regular sentence. In MLA, we would do this. Right? But not in APA. Okay. Then publication name in italics. And then finally, a retrieve from line. From the internet, this is where you put your URL. If it comes from one of the academic databases, just put the name of the database. If you're using the Full Sail Library database, you can always find the name of the database by, once you're in the article, it will tell you, like business source complete. If you can come up with something that more or less looks like this, in other words, if you can show me that you were trying your best to follow APA, so you were either studying the example, because if you scroll down, you can look at her references and do the same thing. See? Author's last name, first initial, year, name of the article, name of the publication. This is volume, issue, page number information. That's a little bit confusing. Maybe you get some of that stuff wrong. Basically, I should be able to look at your citations and your references and say, yes, this person is making the good old, pardon the pun, college try at APA. Where points will be lost is if you're just making stuff up. Okay, so that's my bargain. I won't take off many points, if any, if you're clearly making a strong attempt at APA. But yeah, you get some of the small stuff wrong because we haven't gone into it in detail yet. But just making things up, making up your own citations, making up your own references, completely invented fantasy. That's where points will be lost. Let's see, Brandon says, so for this week, under the bullet point outline, we really only need to write the author's name and year. Yes. I mean, this is where it gets confusing, Brandon. Or excuse me. Yeah, Brandon. We also have a Brannon here. Yes, essentially. Like I said, you actually need more than a year and last name in a year if you are going to use a direct quote. If you've already found a nifty direct quote and you know that it's on page 54 or that it's in paragraph 5, oops, go ahead and do that because you're setting up the citation anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's an easier outline, but I actually I'm not crazy about it. But I also admit it's not fair to have you guys do the detail outline that you would normally do or that students normally do in other months because of the uniqueness of the holiday that interrupted week one. Um, yeah, I think it's an incredibly simple task, right? You have a thesis. You basically just have to come up with a topic sentence for your first thesis point, your second thesis point, your third thesis point, and then here's the thing: you literally have to come up with research. So you can't just make up like Smith 2014 because I'll be able to see a reference and see if you found something legitimate. Okay, so you actually have to do the research and then create the parenthetical citation. Okay, but yeah, it's essentially just asking for Jones. Okay, or in this case, Walsh. Okay, Walsh 2014. Here, Walsh 2014 says, okay, we're basically preparing you for the citations that will appear alongside your quotations in your essay. Brandon says, so it varies depending on if we paraphrase a direct quote. Yes. So here's the Jeep essay, okay? So here's an example where I quote directly. Right, so this is in the article about, actually, let me get rid of this. It's technically correct, but it's going to cause confusion. So let me get rid of this. Okay, so in design, muted earth tones are, quote, usually reserved for backgrounds, end quote. Then author's last name, Chapman, comma, year, 2010, comma, page or paragraph number. Okay, and here's another example. Okay, the ad encourages viewer interaction for, quote, then a quotation appears. And at the end, after the quote, last name, year, page, or paragraph number. Now, here's an example where I do mention the author's name in my sentence, Norm Norville. So as soon as his name appears, the year has to appear in parentheses. So Norm Norville in his article, Story of Jeep, also emphasizes utility, stating, quote, then I deliver the quote, page 44. So basically, you have, this is what's confusing about APA, and we'll get into next week. You always have two choices. It's kind of like those choose your own adventure books. You can name the author's name in your actual sentence, then deliver the quotation, then tell what page or paragraph number it's in. Or you just find your own natural way, not using the author's name to lead into the quotation, like here, and save everything for the end. And basically, you kind of have to feel which one's right. So for here, it didn't feel that important to mention who Radich is because he's not really a big name. Where here, it kind of felt, I don't know, important to give credit to the author. Here's an example of, yeah, this isn't a quotation. This is a paraphrase. So J.M. Fenster, author's name. His name appears in my sentence. I immediately have to put a year in parentheses. Writes that the Jeep, a wartime American creation, was valued by soldiers for its versatility. That's my wording. But the ideas came from his article. So there are no quotation marks. So yeah, for paraphrases, you don't need a page or paragraph number because you're not quoting directly. And of course, I could have chosen to come up with my own way. For example, the Jeep, a wartime American creation, was valued by soldiers for its versatility. Fenster, whatever year that was. I forget what I just erased. Say 2012. Okay. And here I wouldn't need a page or paragraph number because it's a paraphrase, not a quotation. This is the stuff that drives people crazy. Because yes, it's like a series of checks. Am I quoting or am I paraphrasing? That's one check. The second check is, am I going to mention the author's name in my sentence or am I not? And this is why I recommend going to Project APA and just going to the first tab under citations, because it shows you. Okay, 2 formats for a quotation: signal format, parenthetical format. 2 formats for a paraphrase: signal format, parenthetical format. So this is what the outline template is asking for. So you can either imitate the model, okay, the completed model that you have in the instructions, or go to projectapa.info, go to the very first guy here, and do the same thing, okay? Because it's using the same language found in the template: signal format, parenthetical format. Stephanie says, what if there's no author? Or would that be considered not legitimate? No, there are times where there is no author. I'll get into it. But by the way, we're at the end of the session, so people who want to take off or need to take off can. But I'm going to continue to talk and answer questions. So, okay. So if you don't have an author, I mean, I would take a close look at the piece to make sure it's useful, it's giving you quality information. But the rule is to use the first 2 to 3 words of the article title in place of the author. So let's use the example of Ann Donahue. Okay, gimme sales. Imagine that article had no author. Okay. Instead of Donahue, I would take the first 2 to 3 letters. So in this case, the article only has 2 words: gimme sales. Notice that the comma goes inside the quotation marks. 2010. Okay. Or imagine that there's an article called The Road Ahead, The Road Behind. Take the first 2 to 3 words of the road or the road ahead, put in quotation marks, and then continue with the rest. Okay. If there is no date, let me put this back the way it was supposed to be. So, Donahue, 2010. There's no date. Use the abbreviation N period, D period, lowercase. Stands for no date. Okay. Yeah, I know it's Command Z, but sometimes and if it's a direct quote, you would just continue as you always do. Okay, so like paragraph 5, right? Or if there's something with no author and no date, it would look like this. Okay. But most of you probably aren't going to be in this situation. Some of you might be in the situation where you find useful information that doesn't have an author, or that doesn't have a specific date, but probably not both. So is everybody pretty much on board, though? I think as simplified as this outline is, usually my information for this session is better tailored to the more in-depth version of the outline. In other words, it's so stripped down that I fear that it causes more confusion, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's not terribly difficult. What's the title of your ad? Give me your thesis statement, okay? Which you'll get feedback on when I respond to your worksheet. Then once you have a working thesis, take your 3 thesis points and discuss them one at a time. Give me a topic sentence, and then provide research. Okay? Show me that you've done research. And this is for real, because this is so stripped down. Yeah, you should have 3 useful, relevant sources that you found. Okay. And yeah, you got to create the references at the end. So again, you have this student example based on the Diet Coke commercial. So you can study her references and just copy. Okay, do the same thing. Or go to projectapa.info and find the appropriate reference. So if you got something from a website, you can go here. Okay, article from website. Article from website, no author. Even covers tweets and Facebook, though don't use tweets and Facebook. Electronic books and print books. A lot of you are going to spend your time here: newspapers, magazines, databases. Okay, great. Again, if you're clear with what we've gone over, I thank you so much for attending. We will do this again next week. It will be all about APA. But I'm going to hang out a little bit, answer questions about anything, not just this assignment, but anything pertaining to class. But yeah, those of you who are totally clear on what we've gone over, I'm not going to force you to stay. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next week. Christopher says we should probably use, I don't know what that is, Bitly for references. I don't know if that's a typo or something I'm not familiar with. It shortens URLs. What shortens URLs? I mean, URLs, most of them should be manageable. So if you find an online article, um, if you find something through the library database, you just have to put in a line like here, retrieve from business source complete. If it's something from online, you just put in the URL. But if it's from URLs, usually aren't terribly, terribly long. I mean, the URL has to work because I have to be able to get to your article or your source. I mean, my recommendation, I'll look into that because I'm not familiar with it, but my recommendation is just to put the URL for, again, anything that you Google, like a source that you find through the traditional internet. And again, from the Full Sail Library database, it's just a matter of naming the database. So that should be easy. Yeah, but when they make it short, can I still copy and paste that link into my browser and get to the actual article? Okay, if that's the case, then I'm fine with that. I think. My nervousness is, of course, not being able to get to the source and take a look at it. Yeah, references are pretty simple. Look just like this. Okay, and other questions, comments, etc.? Oh, okay, thank you. Bib.com. Is this right? This doesn't look right. Maybe you got the easy bib. Okay. Yeah, there's a citation generator on the library database too. It makes errors though. I don't know if EasyBib does, but when you go to the cite tool, for example, APA, but author's name should not be in all caps. Um, Here, the S in sales should not be capitalized. The rest of it's correct. So that's the only thing I get nervous about citation generators. I think they're great if you can fix the mistakes that they make. Jose says, can I use sources from other websites? Yeah. One should come from the Full Sail Library. The other two can come from any place else as long as it's quality. Again, quality meaning trustworthy. Like it's not someone's personal blog. It's not a discussion post made by some 13-year-old kid in his garage. It's not Wikipedia. It's not IMDb. It's not a product website. It's not a quotation website, again, where you're just finding Abraham Lincoln once said, right? You should be trying to find quality sources that help you speak more specifically about your three topics. So if you're writing about the Call of Duty ad's choice in music, you would do some basic research into the song and try to figure out why the ad uses that song. Yeah, it's just one from the library database. Cody says, for the description of the ad in the worksheet, how detailed should we be? Do you discourage a shot-for-shot description? Well, for the worksheet, if you mean the week one worksheet, that one, it's fine to be detailed. For the outline, it's not asking for a description. I did mention that in the normal detailed version of the outline that we normally use. It does ask for a concise description of the ad because, again, come essay time, a basic introduction will look like this. So, some sort of opening. Just a brief description of the ad, just so the general reader knows what it's about. Okay, that's a print poster in the case of the Jeep ad, and that it's got animal imagery that's reversible, that the ad's tagline is written upside down below the image and up right side up above the image, and then your thesis. Uh, yeah, for the one due tonight, that's fine, shot by shot. Actually, the worksheet asks for a detailed description of the ad, as if you were describing to someone else. Just don't forget that it's asking for more than just a detailed, or if you want, a shot by shot description. It's also asking you to pay attention to key details. So, for example, it's asking you to do two things: to provide a detailed summary of the ad, description of the ad, but also to notice things. So if I were doing the Jeep ad, I might note its color, its textured background, the vintage hand-drawn animals that are reversible, and things like that. Because it's not just about describing the ad in great detail, it's also about noticing important things going on in the ad. Does that make sense? And you do have an example, okay? All the assignments come with examples. So for the worksheets, in the instructions, if you scroll down, you have this guy here. Click this link to see an example worksheet. And then you can see what a past student did. And this is on the Diet Coke ad. So her description is pretty basic. I mean, it's fine. But she does also pay attention to important things. The retro-looking font, the camera pan, the music. Okay. Any other questions, people, or things we should go over? I'm just talking to myself now, but like here's the outline that students normally have to complete. Much, much longer. And it walks you through, right? It takes the introduction paragraph and asks for the one sentence preview of how your essay will begin. It asks you to concisely describe the ad. Then it asks you for your thesis. Then it goes paragraph by paragraph. What is your topic sentence? What's one main point you plan to make? What's the second main point you plan to make? Find a quotation, a full quotation, and then provide a citation for it. Repeat. So yeah, the stripped down version of the outline is awesome because it's a much, much easier task, but it skips a lot of this stuff and just asks for topic sentences and then citations and not much else. So we'll see how that goes. I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I also just realized that the old video from last month is still up, so I'm worried that people are going to be super confused if they watch that lecture instead of this one. But we'll deal with all those headaches when they come. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording of the lecture for the people watching. I'm going to stop now.